We start with a hook, Madhu. If you're building a SaaS for traditional industries, you know the challenges. Customers are busy doing the real work, not sitting in front of screens. Julian Wiedenhaus, CEO and co-founder of PlanCraft, in English PlanCraft, turned that reality into opportunity. From a family carpentry shop to 38 million Series B funding, PlanCraft is now transforming how Europe's craftsmen run their businesses using AI agents, voice control, and human-centered design. Today, we unpack how you scale a startup that makes real work more human.
Welcome to Startuprad.io, your podcast and YouTube blog covering the German startup scene with news, interviews, and live events.
Today, we're joined by Julian Wiedenhaus, CEO and co-founder of PlanCraft, in English PlanCraft, one of Europe's fastest growing SaaS startups of the trades. PlanCraft began with a simple insight. Most craftsmen don't need more paperwork. They need more time for the work that matters. Under Julian's leadership, the Hamburg-based startup grew from a student project to a pan-European platform serving more than 20,000 businesses. Backed by top investors like Headline, Creadum, and the high-tech Gründerfonds HTGF, look into the interview of the former CEO to learn more about them. Recognized by Welt, Wirtschaftswoche, and FAZ, Julian's vision fuses AI, simplicity, human empathy, proving that technology can empower even the most traditional industries. Julian, moin, and welcome to Startuprad.io.
Thanks for having me. Great to see you. Great to talk.
Totally my pleasure. Let us directly jump in with the question. Take us back, to the first moment of your co-founder's carpentry shop. What problem did you see that none of the existing software solutions did solve?
So you got to imagine that was in 2018, somewhere May, June, weather turned great when the business kind of starts to flourish. And then there's just a shit ton of work to do for those folks in the carpentry and in any other craft as well. And so we've been visiting because they've changed the software. Wanted to, of course, improve a lot of things, mainly to speed up, of course, and get more freedom. But secondly, also to better connect construction sites and the office. And so in this carpentry, like roughly 20 folks, 20 employees in that crew, we've seen the hectic everyday life. And I think what existing players, mostly on-premise tools back then, there was no other cloud solution available, did not see or maybe didn't want to see is that they had good business running, They had a product they could sell for a lifetime license, and then they were selling additional packages such as maintenance contracts and service contracts and partially even evolving, including updates. And that was going okay. And people were at least not happy with it, but it was working because there was no other solution at hand. And I think while this business kept being eligible, nobody really dared to fully innovate and fully set on cloud. And I guess what then, of course, changed was that we've been growing up with Spotify, Netflix, and Amazon. And then you don't want to have that. You don't want to have that run on your local computer and your local machine. And we just wanted to bring that freedom and that ease of use to software for the carpentry, because we just saw insanely much was happening in their everyday lives, but not what was really kind of moving the needle for them.
Plus, what I also have in mind, because there will be breaks from time to time for the carpentry work that they can or cannot do at this point. And basically, when they do have a SaaS solution, a cloud solution, they can just simply pull out their tablet, the laptop, and start working, which doesn't necessarily work with on-premise tools. Before PlanCraft, most craft businesses used, for example, Word and Excel. Why was the market so underserved, and what did you learn from observing the real workflows in small workshops?
So basically there were two paths to follow if you have your own construction business. Either you go with something that's basically for free, Word and Excel, nothing you got to kind of pay additionally and you can just use it. Of course, it's not meant to be your enterprise resource planning system, so no ERP. Or the other way was you go with any of the existing on-prem tools, pay a couple of thousand for a lifetime kind of license for you to use that software. And then you have a couple of hundreds of euros per year, partially per month to keep it up and running. And of course, there's a gap in between where companies can either afford for this very expensive tool or they go for Word Excel. And so what we basically did was we filled that gap with as SaaS typical business model. You got to pay monthly or in yearly advance, and then you're going to just have that SaaS fee instead of having those either bigger investments or nothing to use. And so this is kind of still valid until this day, that we try to go with good options for clients that they can actually finance.
Mm. When somebody starts a company with a vision, you somewhere have in the back of my mind, one day I want to. What was your one day catalytic moment? Like the point where you realized this needs to be startup, not just a project?
So while we were doing our interviews after that carpentry, and after every interview, we've came kind of out of it saying, gosh, there's just so much we could do. And kind of it was more of a, where's the end? What's kind of the scope we can actually work on? Always rather than okay, is there anything we could actually do? So after seeing the carpentry, it was already clear that there's definitely the chance for opening up a business. It was just a question of what's that business? How big can it be? And what do we want to do? And where do we kind of feel it has value and we love to do it and form a team around? So yeah, it really started when that first time when we've been in the back office, at least for me. And then after every other interview that we did to understand, is it just a carpentry? If it's just this one carpentry, or if it's any other carpentry we might pick. And yeah, it confirmed more and more and over time. So this was kind of basically building up
the trades in Germany. I know like 80% of our audience is from the DACH area, and they know that you can really learn the trades in a 2-year, 3-year apprenticeship. But you really have to learn it. But the trade sector nonetheless faces massive headwinds, like the skill shortages, because you have to train like people 2-3 years. Then they are like real apprentices, and then they learn more and more. So there's a skill shortage because you cannot like staff all the vacancies. There are claimant mandates and bureaucracy. How did you decide where PlanCraft could make the biggest impact?
So in that sense, kind of we've seen the companies and just figured, okay, we do already have some people working in the trades, even though of course there's a shortage and we need more of them. But just the imagination saying, okay, if the ones that we have wouldn't spend their evenings and days unproductive and loaded with stuff they shouldn't be doing, or that just takes longer than it should, we could achieve already
filings.
For example, way more. Like you got to imagine, usually like Saturday was always is a construction day. It's like a regular work day for most of them, either to earn extra money on the side. And then Sunday is typically the kind of back office day by nature, where you also do kind of everything that you just need to do legally as well. Of course, partially caring for invoices and quotes that just need to serve customers. Whereas in the evenings on a regular work day, there's times just to try and bring order to the chaos that the team is producing because they're not using any tool. And so just seeing that kind of we need to start in thinking, okay, how can we make them more efficient was kind of the starting point. And so we started with quotation and invoicing because we saw that was kind of the task that is taking up the most time if it's spent in the office. So while in the office, which is generally not anything where you would create value for your customers because it's something that you need to do as overhead purely. What's the biggest part of it? And that was pretty clearly invoicing and quotation. So we started with that topic.
We may add for everybody who's not from the area that when you give a quote, there is a limited amount of what it can go up and down. So basically you have to nail the quote. Otherwise you're working more than you get paid for. Let's talk a little bit about this quote calculator and product evolution, going from a quote calculator to full business suite. What was the hardest pivot you made along the way? And when I was looking at your product, you do now cover a lot of common traits, but I was wondering, could, for example, a dog groomer also use your tool?
So let me start at the front of the question. So I guess coming from this quote calculator to the full business suite was quite the challenge to maintain ease of use and simplicity, which by nature means that you won't have a million buttons and a million functions because you just want to keep it lean and clean. And at the same time, as the core operating system of a company, you need to have a good amount of features to be actually the operating system. And so this is a challenge that is just inherent and kind of part of the problem we try to solve. And so it has taken us a good amount of time to always make sure that it's, despite we're adding more depth and more width and features, still doesn't overload the interface. And so I guess this was the biggest challenge. And when you talk about pivots, I guess there have been multiple points where we just realized, okay, let's not add another process that would kind of make sure that we can target another segment. You got to see in the trades, of course, there's different segments by the trades. So there's construction companies, there's carpentries, there's painters, roofers, solators, installers, electricians. So every of these types of business have a couple of things they would really want to have in the tool. And kind of we started on the carpentry with more rather project-based companies in mind, and we had to say no to a lot of features that we found valuable and would be interesting to get into in conversations with other trades we were not serving that well. So it's kind of a constant pivot in the sense that we said no to new things that we would love to do. And I guess now the biggest pivot is what we just kicked off a couple of months back when we said, okay, we want to rebuild in the way we think about an operating system for tradespeople with AI in mind. How is an AI first solution looking like, while having still the range of features and processes that we cover, but being used in the totally different way, more autonomous through agents, more driven through single interfaces and voice steering. And so I guess the biggest pivot is just ongoing.
Mm-hmm. In our interview with Fonio AI, also a company, they said, we don't have right now a reset my password button because it was never requested by a client. Do you have like similar stringent rules you follow in order to achieve not to overload with buttons, not to overload with features, and what you drop and what you actually implement?
So a nice example was in the early days, the first thing that came to mind when we built like a contact list. So as your operation system, you need to maintain clients and have a customer database. And so the kind of tech folks would always just go with, okay, let's build an API to Google Contacts and Apple and just integrate the different solutions that there are because they must store their data there. And then talking to our clients, figuring out, okay, they mostly just have either Excel lists or none at all, maybe stored on their local iPhone or whatever, so they can export this. We don't need to build an API to Google Contacts, for example, that is kind of maintained, because we needed to step into the shoes of our clients. At the same time, of course, we want to push also the kind of where the trades is today and that they use more of the tech available. But this was one example that still until this day found very fascinating when thinking about this, that we always need to remind ourselves, okay, what's something that we would just love to see in that product because we're a tech company, and what's something that our clients really need to have.
When I was researching for this interview, I saw you often say your mission is to create Freiräume für Handwerker, meaning free time for craftsmen. How do you balance this automation with preserving the craft's human touch?
I guess it's nothing that goes in different directions. It's just the same thing. Anything where we can kind of create space, which is how we would translate it. It's a means to give more human touch in the real world, because they can spend their time whatever they gain kind of with whatever they feel is fruitful. So my biggest aha moment that we really make a difference for the lives of our clients was when I've seen a Instagram post of a client that was in a swimming pool, and in the background you could see that kind of there was the pool and there was kids playing around and swimming, and he was on a little table and had his iPad in front of him and basically saying, okay, now I can bring my son to training because he had a swimming class, and I can use the time productively so we can spend the night together. And seeing that was the perfect essence of, okay, this is actual human touch, not in his work, but in his private life. And it's all about giving this space to our clients.
Mm-hmm. Julian, you've scaled a tech company serving people who still work with their hands. There's something deeply human in that contrast. In the Founders World, we'll explore how your daily meditation routine shapes how you lead through chaos. Find the link down here in the show notes. You can subscribe on Substack or YouTube for this premium membership, which only runs $5. Don't worry about it. Not that expensive. Julian, talk about culture. Culture can make or break scaling, especially between Seed and Series B. You said, wer von seinen Werten nicht passt, wird nicht eingestellt. So, which the person whose values don't align does not get hired. How do you keep that culture intact, especially when scaling across countries?
So I guess first of all, kind of it's the answer to the question. So making sure that people who don't align just won't make their way into this company. We do a pretty decent job of communicating what we stand for and what we want to see in people, which is that they are absolutely stoked about the thing that we're doing and we're building together, that they work together and they want to cooperate rather than have their individual success being highlighted. And lastly, being down to earth. And so having those crystal clear values being shown to the outside world, being checked for in the hiring, makes, of course, sure that there's kind of an 80% alignment on that whenever somebody's joining the kind of the team. And then the second part to the answer is, of course, if you don't treat this with care and if you don't live this, especially as the leadership team, but everybody in the company, then it kind of washes down over time. And so I think us as the founders, as the C-level, as the management team, but just as true for every other person in the company, we need to remind ourselves and show this every day and live by this. And it's something that I think we do very, very well, because we all together see that this is very, very important when it comes to maintaining the culture that we love and that we are happy to have.
Talking about the culture that you have and your core values. Actually, that was a little bit of a head scratcher for me. Bock, Zusammenhalt, Bodenständigkeit. Bock is to have enthusiasm. And that took me quite a long time to nail that translation. Solidarity and Bodenständigkeit is down to earthness, especially since you're working with people who really still work with their hands. How do you recruit, especially internationally? You have to have a few people who understand what you want, what you do, what kind of people you're looking for. How do you get like those first people, the core from what you're growing?
I think it's a general question, like how do you interview for values? And it's, of course, situational questions where you have people describe how they've approached certain situations. It's not always only professional situations, but just anything that's important to them in life. And I always go with the question to understand, okay, what kind of shaped you as a person? What are other people that have shaped you and why? And what's something that you find valuable? We ask the question of which is the value of our 3 values that you align most with. Already checking, okay, do they even know the 3 values that we stand for? Have they checked it? And then which one they pick and why? and then to just trust the interview process of making sure that happens. And this is done first right away when kind of screening candidates, and also at the very end. Until this day, someone of the especially management team, but mostly even founders are still involved to make sure kind of that we check twice on this, because this is the most precious thing that we have.
Founders, if you're scaling a SaaS beyond your comfort zone, drop a comment. What's your biggest challenge? Culture, pricing, or product market fit? Julian, you moved from 40 to over 100 employees in a year. What system, what mental framework or idea helped you scale culture as well as headcount?
So I think culture is something that only scales if you manage this well and actively. And I mean, we've just talked about it, that it's something that we bake into everything that we do. And it's more about making culture kind of tangible, that people know what it is and have this on their mind, because it's something that tends to be forgotten way too quick. So whenever we do OKRs such as goal setting, we partially even connect kind of how do those fit into our framework of our values. I mean, we mostly, of course, use our values as the one thing that's super sharp and super concrete and easy to use. And culture is way more than that. Culture is everything that we do, and mostly also the stuff that we are not aware of that we're doing this. When it comes to kind of doing coffees and bringing something to your colleagues, and the handshake that we have, and anything that's kind of making us special that we don't really feel and see it because it's normal for us. It's about highlighting those things and making sure they kind of are lived, are reinforced. And this is something that happens from the team, but of course, mostly through the leadership. And having this leadership team in place when we've been the 40 to then even scale to cross 100 and not just throw people at a problem, but just really go in a structured way is just as important as scaling the culture.
Mm-hmm. Let's dig a little bit into your growth mechanics. You transitioned from a few early adopters, which usually on average include some relatives and friends, to really 20,000 paying customers. How did you do that?
So this is the kind of the core question everybody would love to see. And if there would be an easy answer, everybody would do it. So it's a complex system of things that we've tried out and stuff. But for us, the most important channels have been, of course, having the best product in the market, at least from our perspective, because that will increase CVRs, that will drive referral, that will do anything kind of for you. And so having this product that we're really, really obsessed with and trying to make sure that it's the best in doing the job of creating space is the core and most crucial thing. And you can have the best marketing, you can have the best sales. It won't last for long if your product's shit. And so you need to care about it very, 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 very much. And besides that, kind of we always try to go with a rather product-led approach, where also the product is not only delivering value, but it's also easy to learn, easy to understand, and something that especially in our target group was very, very crucial. And then again, that drives really that we can win creators that we collaborate with and carry us out in the world. If we would be a shitty company that has a stupid culture nobody wants to work with and has a shitty product, you cannot win, at least not for long, creators. You cannot pay that much money that people will advertise shitty products. You cannot have word of mouth, which is something that is a core emotion for us. Of course, we kind of subsidize in a way that we or incentivize our clients to do referrals. So we do work with Cello as one tool to kind of have them participate in the ARR they generate for us through referral. And so kind of it's a actual good relationship with the client, saying, okay, thank you. And not here's like a $20 Amazon voucher, but it's you can participate in the value you create by referring the product. And so I guess just layering these different motions and all connecting them to having a good product is the one thing that really, was always crucial and essential in making that happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Guys, we'll be back right after a short break where Julian shares how PlanCraft's pricing model and product-led growth strategy turned word of mouth into sustainable scale. Julian, welcome back. You mentioned pricing and ACV strategy in past interviews. How did you balance the affordability for small trades with predictable ARR for investors?
So I guess it's not about an ARR for investors, but it's about ARR for the company. The one thing I always like to take as a metaphor is kind of Robin Hood. So we always try to focus on having an affordable product for the very, very small ones of our customers, and at the same time charging the prices the bigger clients can afford, for again the bit bigger clients, to just balance this off. And I guess having this in mind, we've of course are in a very, very nice situation of being an invoicing tool. So we know more or less kind of the revenue of a company that's working with us. And so we of course check, okay, how much do you actually pay compared to what's the revenue that you're making? And we even know how it's composed. And that of course helped us understanding and having a guidance on, okay, how much should those companies pay for PlanCraft depending on how much money you're making and how much, what's your overall margin, etc.
Mm-hmm. Product-led growth in construction SaaS kind of sounds counterintuitive. How did you design onboarding to work for craftsmen, not tech users?
Yeah. So the core question we've asked ourselves, okay, what's the first big win that you need to achieve in order to understand and love the product? I mean, it's the same thing as Meta, formerly Facebook, did back then, was finding out, okay, what's that one movement when people really stick? And for us, that was really identifying those wins and how can we make sure that happens super, super fast. So in early days, we've skipped some of the regular process steps. When you want to create your first quote, you need to usually create a little project in which you also create the customer. And we said, okay, to really give the client a fast aha moment, we've kind of speed up that process. And so you create your account and then you just hit, okay, create my first quote. And kind of we've done that steps for you in the background. We've kind of reworked this flow, I guess, 100 times. But it was always about thinking, okay, what's the win the customer needs to do? And how can you make sure to show this really, really quickly?
Mm-hmm. You've been doing some interesting stuff. You built a strong influencer network with creators. How did that community-first strategy impact the trust in your brand, and how do you measure that?
So I guess measuring this is super, super difficult, and it's something that's rather qualitative in nature. When you talk to clients, when you talk to partners, and you can sense, are they actually trusting you? Are they actually willing to go the extra mile? Are they enduring fuck-ups that you do over time because you increase prices overly or you miscommunicate certain feature releases, whatever it is? I guess it's all the metrics that you have that paint this picture. I guess what really matters in this sense is that we work with real tradespeople, not just somebody who's doing advertising for us. So it was always mandatory that they really, use the system themselves to create offers and invoices and whatever they need to do, to really be standing behind the product and seeing that it has a value. And so this was really crucial for us, that we are not doing something superficial, but just honestly and true.
Mm-hmm. We've been talking and teasing a little bit about AI in your tool before. What role does it play, especially using AI agents, voice-first interactions? Is the Blade the next generation of PlanCraft?
Yes, AI agents is the next generation of PlanCraft, definitely, because it has just insanely valuable for our clients to think they could get new employees, digital ones, without having to source for them, having to onboard them, and having to pay them, even in a way. At least we're not charging as much as an actual coworker. And so in a industry where you have a shortage of skilled labor and even unskilled labor, it is very interesting to have this agentic approach. And so I guess looking in the next kind of 1 to 3 years into the future, we will see dramatic changes in the way small businesses are being operated and run.
When talking about AI, everybody has something, everybody has tools, features, also bugs, obviously. Well, I was wondering if you guys do you have a framework for deciding which AI features will be built next versus what you leave out?
So it's following the same kind of logic that we've always tried to have, is really, okay, where do our customers lose most of the time, and where is kind of the most potential that we see? And then from there on, we decide, okay, what's the bet that we want to take? And at the same time, we also need to acknowledge that, especially in early days of new technology and new solutions, you need to experiment a lot, and you just need to develop stuff, throw it out to the clients, get real world feedback, and then see what sticks and what works and what not. And so at the same time, we try to have both, kind of experimenting a lot and just playing around with whatever is kind of, again, state of the art in this week and what's possible, and in parallel following kind of the track where we see, okay, tackling the problems, the bigger ones that our customers have, where kind of the most potential sits.
In the Founders Vault, Julian breaks down different pricing experiments and referral loops, how he trains his team to think like craftsmen and not coders, to learn more in our Founders Vault. Taking you now a little bit into vision and reflection part of this interview. You said every employee at PlanCraft should experience AI. How do you do this on an operational basis?
So you need to give access to the tools that are at hand. And I guess sounds super logical, but I see a lot of companies holding back, and then there's somebody requesting, and then there's a no. So we really give room, and also use that money that we've, of course, fundraised through investor rounds to make sure that we were always thrilled about having the newest solutions at hand, just to understand what's currently possible. And then secondly, of course, just getting the people that also want to experiment and that want to collect these experiences is a very important step, especially in a growing company. And also with the existing team, just making sure everybody understands why they should do it, why they should experiment, rather than the how. So I guess this is the core task every management, founder, whoever runs an organization has to fulfill. We don't experiment with AI and experiences because it's a hype topic, but because it has so much to offer for you, and making sure that this translation follows and doesn't threaten people, but makes them curious and willing to experiment and try stuff. And there will always be the negotiation if there is enough time operationally to really figure out stuff. And so while on the one hand, you have to communicate to the team that if it's important for them, and that's something they should understand, they need to invest the time. And on the other hand, you also need to, as a founder or management, make sure that there's room and goals set in a way that there's this potential to play around with it.
I was wondering, what's your vision for Europe's craft industry for 2030 if digitalization finally catches up with them?
I guess just having a workforce that is fully digitized, where there's no paper trail, that would be already something which doesn't sound too fancy and future-led. But if you look in the real world in construction, that is something that would really envision is every company is using the tools to get rid of paper trail, increase data quality, increase speed and efficiency among their teams and peers.
Last question on AI, I promise. What's a common misconception about AI in the more traditional industries that you wish founders would stop?
I'm not so sure that founders are the ones communicating misconceptions. I guess there's just a lot of buzz and hype in any different direction that you might look, because it's just a topic that nobody yet knows how it will turn out and how it really will reshape. I guess what everybody, I feel, are now agreeing on is that if you learn or do an apprenticeship and get to learn the job of a carpenter or of a painter, that you will be very, very much valuable in the next couple of years. And I, of course, go the step further and just think of, okay, if you are not only a carpenter, but you are an AI-enabled carpenter that also gets rid of the stuff that's kind of annoying, then you'll be the top one. So why not directly answering the question? But I guess this is just my standpoint. Not knowing what other founders proclaim that I find difficult. Again, there's a lot of misconception, I guess, but just because nobody really knows, neither do I. I just know it from my industry and how we'll change that.
Mm-hmm. From our audience, I would like to know, if you're running a tech startup in a more traditional industry, what's the biggest mindset barrier that you have faced? Comment down here. Let's do a few more questions, very, very soft, very slow. What advice would you give founders for building for non-digital native users?
Get in touch a lot. Sit next to those people. Really understand how they are using your tool or any other tool, and just familiarize and lay off your own perspective.
What's one belief or practice, maybe from your meditation, that keeps you balanced through scaling chaos?
I think it's two thoughts. One is, I always think there's so many great companies and so many people who have built this, who have gone through struggles of having this chaos. So we will be fine. We will also do this. So it's a lot of good kind of, confidence in ourselves, I guess, is the one thing. And the other one, a big belief I have, is just that you got to show up and do the work. There's not enough shortcuts in life for you to only run shortcuts. So you got to show up. Again, you got to talk to your clients. You got to get your hands dirty. You got to do the work. And of course, one or the other thing can automate or give out of your hands, but it should be the actual work that you feel you're doing, if it really should be helpful.
Mm-hmm. And our two usual closing questions. Are you open to talk to new investors?
As we've just closed our Series B now in 2025, in summertime, right now is not a good time. The only time I take is to go and talk to you on this podcast, because I find it's valuable to share the learnings that we've made. But not right now.
I think there is then, of course, the second usual questions. You just raised funds, as you said. Are you currently looking for talented people?
If you are as stoked as I am about the change in construction, and if you are not only an AI native, but also somebody who's wanting to work together very closely, then please join my team and reach out. Just check PlanCraft.com. I'm sure you're going to share the link. That we have plenty of open slots. And feel free also to reach out to me directly through LinkedIn. Just hit me up.
Mm-hmm. Julian, it was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much. Hope to have you back after your Series C funding.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
That's all, folks. Find more news, streams, events, and interviews at www.startuprad.io. Remember, sharing is caring.